Welcome back to Room 1-on-1 from the Homeboys. With the thousands heading to Rotterdam for Celtic's Champions League match with Feyenoord, I'm here doing the doggies and looking ahead to this week's visit to the other mecca of world football, the Tony Macaroni, as Livingston host us this Saturday afternoon. As always, I am delighted to welcome Talk Livy co-host and Livingston aficionado, Euan Rankine, back to the show to help us out. Euan, how are you, my friend?
I'm really good, mate. Thank you for having me back on. I'm obviously not that bad if you've had me back on this many times, Scott. So,
mate, a fan's favourite, an absolute fan's favourite here. Your undying optimism and your fucking steadhard appreciation for the artificial pitches will always have you a place at my dinner table, pal.
you know me and artificial pitches. I just bought a new house, and the first thing I did was get a quote for the stuff in the back garden. So I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
Fantastic. So as I said, you're an old hand now, so we'll get right into it. And we'll have a look at last season before we come on to this season. So, Livingston's fifth consecutive SPL season of the current run, with the team once again being led by the skint Davy Martindale. The season kicked off with the League Cup groups, and you were paired with Albion Rovers, Inverness, Cove Rangers and Celtic Hearts. 3 wins from 4 meant that Livingston finished the group in second place, but with those 3 wins, 9 points, they allowed you to qualify for the knockout rounds. 2-1 defeat at home to Dundee United at the end of August meant that the competition was ended for Livy for another year. League-wise, an inconsistent start was followed by an inconsistent middle, and the season finished off with an inconsistent finish. From the opening day defeat to Rangers on the 30th of July to the 1-1 draw away at Tynecastle with Hearts on the 12th of November, it was some ups, some downs, followed by ups and downs. So at the end of match day 15, when the World Cup came about, Livingston were sat in 4th place. 15 games played, 7 wins, 2 draws, 6 defeats. 15 goals scored, 20 conceded, -5 goal difference, 23 points on the board, 2 points behind Aberdeen in 3rd, and 2 ahead of Hearts, St Johnstone and St Mirren, who were below. Now, we'll not go mad deep into it. It's an all right start. It's not a great start, but you're sitting in 4th place. I mean, what was the feelings at that point with you?
I mean, I say this every time I come on. It's always a case for us at the start every season. The ambition is to stay in the league for another season. So 10th place and above is always deemed a success. And I think the season before last, missing out on the top 6 on the final day and seeing the likes of Motherwell and Dundee United get into the European spots, it was an opportunity missed, and that season always had a bit of a what if feeling. But I think we kind of kept the nucleus of the squad together from that season. So I thought we actually started the campaign really well, and I think it came from the fact that there was a bit of continuity in the squad, in terms of how Davy was wanting to play. Kind of had settled on a preferred kind of system, which was a 4-3-3 for the vast majority of the season. And we had some really, really good performances in amongst that opening 15 games. And when we went away to Tynecastle, really should have got over the line in that one. It was a 97th minute equaliser, which had about three or four incidents in it that could have disallowed it through VAR. Arguably should have finished off the game at Ibrox and got our first ever win in Old Firm territory as well. So there was kind of points left out there, I feel, as well in that first 15 games. But it was a decent start, and I think, as I say, it kind of came down to that continuity. And I spoke to the gaffer at the start of last season, and he kind of said he was wanting to kind of try and push on top 6, and talked about taking Livy into Europe as well. So it's obviously his kind of lasting ambition is to do that with the football club, but it was almost a bit that, and I'll go on to talk about it obviously come the end of the season, but I almost feel we kind of hyped ourselves up a little bit, and I feel pundits started hyping us up a little bit as being contenders for top 6, and there was a point in the season where your pundits were going, Livy will be top 6 this season.
Right, we'll hold that thought, right, and we'll certainly come straight back to this once. We'll tidy up the rest of the season then. So after the World Cup was pretty much the same. Like you said, kind of ups were followed by downs. 2 separate occasions you went through 3-match losing streaks, but you're offset with that own very 5-match unbeaten run at the turn of the year. So on the 22nd of April, though, 2-0 defeat by Dundee United meant that Livingston missed out in the top 6 finish that you were talking about there. So, and again, that's basically the same as last season. I mean, you win that game, you're in the top 6. So you're in the bottom 6 groups, 3 defeats, a 2-1 win over Dundee United, 1-1 draw with Motherwell meant the end of the season, Livingston would finish in 8th position from 38 games, 13 wins, 7 draws, 18 defeats, 36 goals scored, 60 conceded, -24, 46 points on the board. Same as St Mirren in 6th place, the famous split. And but you were 4 off in Motherwell, who were in 7th. 3 points ahead of St Johnstone in 9th. And importantly, as you just opened up, 12 points ahead of Ross County in 11th. Scottish Cup, a visit to Stenhousemuir in January afforded you a 3-1 win, but then another chance to host Inverness, who had already done you in the League Cup, finished half the same way, this time a 3-0 reverse, and Livingston departed the competition. So, my summary is basically another successful season. Could have been better again.
Yeah, basically it was almost a carbon copy of the season before. You know, come the end of January, we had a decent run in January. I think the first game in February, we won 3-1 at home against Kilmarnock and was 3-0 up at half time. And for 45 minutes of that game, we were arguably the best we played all season. And you're kind of sitting thinking, right, we're in a right good position here. We're sitting 4th, I think, when we played Hearts, and only 5 points behind them with a game in hand, possibly, if memory serves me right. So you're kind of sitting there and thinking, right, we've got a right good opportunity of going for top 6 here. But it coincided with a catastrophic level of performance away from home, essentially, between then and the end of the season. And the catalyst for that kind of slump in form seemed to be that Inverness Cup tie. 0-0 at half-time, very kind of lacklustre, and then Inverness battered us in the second half, 3 goals in the second half, and you're out of the cup. But it seemed to just trigger the kind of tail end of the season for us. It was 8 away games on the bounce, no goals scored, 8 defeats. I think it's a top-flight record for defeats in a row away from home. And some of the performances were awful. Simply awful. There's no other way of getting about it. You know, we had back-to-back games away at St Mirren, away at Motherwell, 3-0 down at half-time in both games. The manager decided to change a system to stop St Mirren. You know, he decided to match St Mirren up, and it was to stop St Mirren. And, you know, no disrespect to St Mirren, but I feel we're more than capable of going and stamping our own authority on a game against them. We shouldn't be need to try and stop St Mirren. And
well, especially if you actually come back to the point you were making that I interrupted you about, was that because of your own performances, and because of ever since David Martindale, the overachieving he's doing, then I can't understand how a couple of bad results would grind you down, especially when you, like you said, I'll use Open Goal for an example. You're often a friend of the show. The way they guys talk about Livingston as well, they basically put, if Livingston's not playing Celtic or Rangers, they generally put them down for a win. And I know I made that kind of wee snidey remark about David Martindale's no money, but the facts of the matter is, I mean, the true facts of it.
Genuinely, he has no money.
I mean, it's funny to hear him talking about it, but it's fucking true. So whilst it's an ultimate pat in the back, it is quite a heavy burden to sit and tap a team that basically costs peanuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, as I say, just it wasn't even the fact that we missed out on top 6. I feel it was the manner in which we just finished the season. It was just an absolute slump. If you compare it to the season before, you know, we ended up finishing that season with 6 games unbeaten, 3 wins, 3 draws. So you're going into the new season with a bit of a buzz, a bit of optimism kind of carrying over. whilst this season, the kind of overall feeling from fans was just one-off trepidation, fear,
Really?
Yeah, and I think it, I kind of talked about it on Open Goal, and, it was our lowest goals scored since we've been back in the top flight, 36 over the season. Most goals conceded since we've been back in the top flight, 60. Worst goal difference to kind of coincide with that, minus 24. There was kind of worrying trends, obviously that away record I told you about as well. So there was kind of, you were carrying these bad trends into the new season, and that's probably what gave fans a little bit of fear coming into the new campaign. And I'll be the first to admit I kind of had a little bit of scepticism about us coming into the new campaign, even though once again we've kind of got the nucleus of a squad that's just finished 8th and comfortably 8th over the course of the campaign.
Well, exactly, that's comfortably. You're up one place at least, aren't you? If it's a normal league, you know what I mean? So it's.
This is the thing. It's like, if you told me before the start of the season we finished 8th place and we're not in a scrap at any point in the campaign, I'd absolutely bite your hand off for that. And I feel realistic Livingston fans would probably say similar. But as I say, I felt there was a kind of feeling amongst the squad and the manager that they were kind of bigging up the prospect of going for top 6, bigging up the prospect of going for top 4. And instead of going under the radar like we've done probably in previous seasons, the media were talking us up, opposition fans were talking us up as being kind of in the mix, and our own fans. You're a fan yourself, Scott. When the manager or the players come out and say things like that, you're going to believe that that's the overall ambition for the season.
100%.
And
100%.
I feel like some fans started to get, expectations above our level. And at the end of the day, it is a when you strip it back, it is a successful campaign, but it was just a kind of almost a carbon copy. I think there was only, again, I would need to say league table, but I think 4 points of a difference between the 2 campaigns.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot to kind of pick between them. And it was, as you say, missing out on top 6 in the final game before the split. There were so many parallels between the 2 seasons, but just because of how last season finished, it kind of just took the shine off it a little bit, whilst the season before we had a positive end to it.
That's mega interesting, really interesting, because I do remember you being in Open Goal, and I do remember people talking down Livingston, and as you say, it's probably because of that way it finished last season. I think there's an expectation that you can only go so far.
Yeah.
Like doing the same trick, do you know what I mean? Like in terms of relying on man management. I mean, we've all seen it. I think we've seen it at every level. It kind of, something happens, be it just a wealth of fucking injuries or something, do you know what I mean? Or like you get a transfer when they're badly wrong, as in Celtic did a few years ago, and everything just crumbles down, do you know what I mean? So
like last season for us in terms of our recruitment, I think was probably one of our worst years, or worst kind of summer windows that Davies probably had. In terms of the guys that came into the squad, they made little to no impact, and a lot of them aren't at the football club anymore. Take out Shamal George and goals, who I know it was his first season and probably the highest level he's played at as well, but there was a kind of, he was hit or miss, and especially kind of after his injury before the World Cup break, kind of had a sketchy run of form in the second half of the season. But to kind of look at players that made a genuine impact on the side last season, it's very, very minimal in terms of new arrivals. So there was kind of that aspect of it as well, and it didn't seem like we added a lot of kind of depth to the squad to improve it on the previous season, which might have been the difference between us pushing into the top 6. You never know.
Yeah, so one or two guys coming straight into the first team and kind of staying there for the whole season. I know what you mean. As Per, you're an absolute expert with this, so that's a fantastic segue to go into the summer, and we look at the ins and outs, as obviously. So we'll start out with the outs as always. So the first big one straight away, Nicky Devlin departing for Aberdeen in a free. No matter what way you put it, a big blow. Do you know what I mean? However much you've it's on the cards. Jack Hamilton, 23-year-old striker, left the club for a nominal fee, joined Raith Rovers. Hamilton had spent a loan at Hartlepool United the previous season. Jack Fitzwater, a 25-year-old English defender. He joined Exeter City. Now, he played 34 matches last season and he's played 107 games in total for you, 8 goals returned. Jays Kabir, a 23-year-old Irish winger, left for his hometown team of Cork. Kabir sent half of last season with Morton and then the second half of last season with Queen of the South. Jackson Longbridge, 28-year-old fullback, departed for Hamilton Accies after spending a loan with Cove Rangers last season. 27-year-old Belgian midfielder Stefan Omenonga joined Doha club Beni Sakin. Omenonga had 63 appearances and 0 goals in his 2-year stay. And finally, 22-year-old United States keeper Brian Schwarke left for Castellon in the third tier of Spanish football without making much of a dent at the club. 22-year-old Welsh centre-back Morgan Boys signed for Liverpool a year and a half ago, joined Inverness on loan. 80-year-old Lucas Stenhouse has went to Bo'ness for the season. Right, so incomings. After losing one Devlin, you obviously need to replace him, so you went and got picked yourself up.
It's all about saving on the budget there. Just sign a Devlin for a Devlin, don't need to reprint the tops.
Very good, very good. So you picked up Mikey Devlin from Hibs. Now, 29-year-old centre-back, former Scotland cap, has saw his career stutter with injuries over the past couple of years and more recently played for Hibs, but only played one time last season. 24-year-old Liberian international Mohamed Sangare was picked up from Accrington Stanley. A former Newcastle youth player, he's represented his country on 8 occasions, scoring twice. Mile Welch Hayes, a 26-year-old English defender, was picked up from Harrogate Town. Michael Nottingham, a 34-year-old defender, was signed from Accrington Stanley as well. He was born in Birmingham, but he represented St Kitts and Nevis national team twice. Now we get a bit fruity. South African 20-year-old midfielder Afelele Teto was signed from his home country team of TS Galaxy. Samson Lawal, a 19-year-old Nigerian midfielder, was signed from Katsun United. And Danny James Lloyd McGoldrick, a well-travelled 31-year-old Liverpudlian midfielder, was signed from Rochdale, as expected, all on freeze. Daniel Mackay, 22-year-old winger, was loaned from Hibs. Mackay's represented Scotland at schoolboys under 19, 21 level. Right, so we're a good few games in now. Straight away, who for that are you missing, if any, and who's impressed that you've seen so far?
Yeah, well, the main ones out of the guys who departed the club who were regulars on the side, obviously Nicky Devlin was club captain as well, and we sponsored Nicky on the podcast for 3 years, and we're obviously big fans of his. And off the park, he's an absolute class act, Nicky, and
right.
Kind of wish him nothing but the best of luck at Aberdeen. But kind of speaking to him at the tail end of last season, I think the opportunity to go to Aberdeen, where he was going to get the opportunity to play European football for the first time in his career, it would be guaranteed as well that to have the chance of playing 8 games in Europe. I think that was kind of the biggest selling point for him at his age. I think Nicky's 29, if memory serves me right. So yeah, Nicky's probably the biggest blow in terms of what he brings overall to the football club. And I'd go as far as saying when Livy fans kind of strip back and get over the petty anger that some of them had about Nicky signing for a much bigger club in Aberdeen, I think they'll realise that he's probably one of the best fullbacks the club's had in its history. And I don't debate that for a second with Nicky. So kind of wish him the best of luck. Jack Fitzwater's a kind of interesting one. His first season at the club, the COVID season, he was in and out the side a lot, and he kind of alternated with Kieran Brown, Effie Ambrose, a Celtic cult hero as well, who was at Livy at the time. And it was probably the following season where Jack really kicked on and was playing every week, and he was kind of our established centre-half pairing with Io Obalai. Last season, I felt Jack's form dipped a little bit, and he's obviously decided to move on, and I think it's only in the last couple of weeks that he's been picked up by Exeter. But again, Jack obviously playing over 100 games at the football club was kind of ever-present near enough in his last couple of seasons. And then Stefan Omiyonga is probably the other one, but again, Stefan was kind of second half of last season very much in and out the side.
Right.
So a lot of the players that moved on, it was expected. I think we were expecting all those guys to move on. In terms of the players that have arrived at the football club, I think the one that probably came with a bit of scepticism for obvious reasons because his injury record was Michael Devlin. He's at the end of the day, the guy's played for Scotland, be it in a poor stretch for the national team, but to represent your country at any point is he's obviously a decent defender when he is fit and available. And I think the scepticism was obviously, are we going to be able to get him out on the pitch? And so far, he's played in every competitive game just about since the start of the season. And we were cautious, I think, with his contract as well. It was a kind of 3-year deal. However, it was a year by year, almost rolling contract based on appearances, season by season. So I'm just hazarding a guess here that he'll need to play at least 25 games to trigger another year. So I think we've been really cautious in how we've approached that one, but I
think he's a realistic guy as well. I mean, I listened to the Nutmeg, and they had him on. I think they had him on for 3 shows in the bounds, and he's not had these problems to stick the boy. Do you know what I mean? So for him to come into a good club at Livingston, and I did have a look when I was doing my wee bit of research, and like you said, played every game, and you can't grudge a guy that, can you? You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially as you say, he played for Scotland. Doesn't matter what level, but
it was as recently as Steve Clark being in charge of the national team, so it's fairly recent times that he's been involved in the national setup. But he's already been given the armband, again replacing a Devlin with a Devlin in the armband. But he's, you can see why he was playing at the level he was, and I do believe if we can get him out in the park for 30 games this season, I think he could be one of the signings of the season in the league. I think it's that, and to be brutally honest, he's not at us if it wasn't down to his injury record. But I think he's probably the pick of the bunch for me if we get him out on the pitch. Coinciding with that, he did come off at the weekend with a knock on his ankle, so it's maybe touch and go whether he plays at the weekend against Celtic. But in terms of the other guys that have arrived, Mo Sangare, he came in from, and the manager kind of said that he was a direct replacement for Stefan Omiyonga. However, if you looked at them side by side, you wouldn't necessarily think that, because he's an absolute unit of a guy, Sangare, and he certainly carries a little bit more of a goal threat than Omiyonga did, and that's already been seen this season with his winner at Easter Road, which he's been telling Davy apparently that he's going to lick it, and Davy was going, I haven't seen you lick a boy yet, and came off the park after licking one into the top bin at Easter Road and just saying that was me licking it, Gaffer. So it was very interesting. The local journal was saying, I didn't think I would hear Davy Martindale talking about licking balls in a press conference, but he certainly did that day. But yes, Mo Sangare, and he seems like a bit of a character as well. He was up at Dingwall at the weekend, and he came over and was kind of singing and dancing with the fans at the end of the game. So he's certainly a wee bit of a character, and I think he's a bit raw, but I think he's got the potential to be a decent signing for us. Michael Nottingham, for any absolute football daft nuts, I think if anyone watched the Salford documentaries on Sky Sports, Michael Nottingham got picked up by the guys, the Man United class of 92 guys at Salford in the lower leagues, and ended up moving on to Blackpool. He only turned pro at 29, but kind of listening to him chat, I think he's embracing the opportunity to come up here and play at full houses at like say Celtic Park, Ibrox, Tynecastle, Pittodrie, these sort of grounds. So I think he's just kind of relishing the opportunity. He wasn't in the squad at the weekend. He's been carrying a knock as well. But they're kind of the main signings that we've brought in. I think you listed all the guys that came in as well. But Afalele Teto, the South African, he's came in with a bit of hype. However, he's not going to be available until the earliest January because he didn't get a work permit issued. But Davy Martindale's talked of him very, very highly, and I think he's created a bit of excitement, and our podcast has started getting listeners from Africa as a result of it. So I can't complain. Samson Law, we've not seen a lot of him either. He's, again, I think signed a 3-year deal. He's representing Nigeria age group level fairly recently at the Under-19s World Cup. So there's a bit of potential there, and I think he's quite versatile, can play anywhere across kind of middle to front. So he's a decent option for us going forward. Miles Welsh, I've actually only seen 45 minutes of him in a pre-season game, and I think he's been injured since, so I can't really comment on what to expect from him so far. So the signings we've made, so the signings we've made, it's kind of a couple you know a little bit more about, but as always in our kind of recruitment drive, you're always going to get one or two who you need to go on the Wikipedia and see their club history and and do a little bit of digging. But I'm sure, trust the manager, he tends to do pretty well in the market in terms of his recruitment. So, and he has been, as we all know, he's been working on a very strict budget this year as well. So.
Right. Well, I'm kind of going to touch on what you said earlier on. So squad-wise, for me, and I put it up every time, my own ignorance, it's pretty much the same old faces when I look at the squad. You spoke about my minute ago, I'd highlighted Jamal George, the English keeper that you picked up from Colchester, so he's very much the number one. I haven't watched your highlights for this season. Whilst it doesn't seem to be a wonder keeper that you guys have actually had good keepers in the past, he looks decent enough. He looks like he's making 2 or 3 decent saves a game, but the ball seems to bounce off his chest a hell of a lot.
I think with Jamal, after having Max Stryjek previously, Max was either sublime or just complete and utter chaos.
Ridiculous.
You didn't know what you were getting, and I think that's a terrible quality in a goalkeeper. Just almost having the expectation that your keeper could have a nightmare every game and make an absolute
howler. Ambrose effect.
Yeah, but it's the one probably the one position on the football park you just don't want that quality in a player, and I think Jamal's very level. I think he's a kind of very level goalkeeper. He doesn't do anything, I wouldn't say spectacular, but he's a very steady Eddie goalkeeper. And one thing I would say with Jamal, I think his distribution's probably some of the best I've seen from a Livi goalkeeper in a wee while as well. So I think Jamal, the fact we gave him a 4-year deal, which is, I think there's only 2 players in the club's history that have ever signed a 4-year deal, him and Stefan Skugel. So Davies obviously got the expectation he might only be there for a couple of seasons before being picked up by someone else. So hopefully, what I said about Jamal being...
I'm just looking the new. He's 6'3". He's 25-year-old. He started with Liverpool. I mean, that was his youth club, and he was with the club for 4 seasons. So, yeah, I mean, 25. You generally at this point they either get better, don't they, or they, as you say, kind of just. So you say you never know. You never know. Like I said, for the highlights I've looked at him, I said he never cracked me as one of the keepers to go hoofed. You know what I mean? He never stable. I think. Right, Scott Pittman. Obviously, Scott Pittman's a good player. Bruce Anderson's been scoring goals. Stephen Kelly always impresses. I'm amazed Jason Holt's still patrolling that midfield. And despite David Martindale's best attempts, Joe Noble is still up top.
I think
is David getting weighed in for him? Is that what is happening?
I think with Joe, see personally, I love Joe, and he's very, very entertaining to watch. I don't think there's any debate about that. And on his day, he could ragdoll any defence in the league, and he's proven that over the kind of 18 months he's been at the football club. Joe's form dropped off a cliff last season, kind of February onwards, but you could say that about pretty much anyone in the squad at that point. And he's not. We have tweaked our system this year, and I think part of that, I kind of mentioned the goals conceded column last season. That's irked, I would say, and that's quoting the manager directly when I spoke to him early in the season. It irked him the amount of goals we lost last year, and he's kind of went to a back 3, playing 4 across in front of that, and then kind of 2 inverted 10s with a focal point up top. And Joel's played as one of those inside 10s, and for me, it doesn't suit him. I think where Joel's at his best is when he's out wide and he's able to isolate guys 1v1, and especially kind of fullback, and fullbacks maybe don't tend to carry the same height as a centre half, and he can physically kind of dominate guys. And the only game I would say Joel's really hit his true potential this season was the Hibs game, and a lot of that came down to the fact he was getting into the wide areas, he was isolating their fullbacks on a regular basis, and he absolutely ragdolled Hibs at Easter Road that day. So Joe, there's a lot more to come from Joe, and I think he'll know himself that he's not been hitting the same heights, but I don't know how much the transfer talk is maybe playing a part in that. I've no idea. He seems a very kind of level guy. I don't think much gets to him, so he seems quite laid back about those sort of things. So it's maybe just a kind of dip in form that he's had, or kind of adjusting to the slight tweak in our system that we've made this year. But Bruce Anderson's probably been, Bruce looks more like himself. Last year, I would say Bruce struggled a wee bit last year, being kind of that focal point, and he was carrying a bit of an ankle injury at the start of last year, so it probably took him till October time to start having a regular run of games in the team. And he still finished a joint top goal scorer last season, albeit with 7 goals, but he's already hit 5 this season, 3 in the League Cup, 2 in the league, got the equaliser up in Dingwall, and it was barely even a chance, the one he had at the weekend up in Dingwall. But that's what Bruce is brilliant at. If you give him opportunities, he will score his goals, and I think he's very close to, or he might have already become our leading goal scorer in our history in the top flight. So in the space of 2 seasons, so kind of tells you the type of striker he is. And albeit there was a bit of interest from a club in Azerbaijan for him just after the League Cup games, or I think after the pre-season games, but the boy from Banff didn't fancy a trip out to Azerbaijan. So yeah, Bruce will be here for the end of the season, but our success is probably going to pin on him quite a lot, because he is a clear and obvious kind of goal scorer in the side. Players that have kind of impressed a lot this season, our back 3 has been DeLucas, Oberlai and Devlin since the opening game against Aberdeen. All 3, I think, have been excellent. I think Oberlai's gone a little bit under the radar with our fans, but I know the manager kind of talked about him and saying how we actually probably missed him a lot more than we anticipated when he got injured kind of March time last year. And I think it's actually shown. Luigi DeLucas has been fantastic. He's already won our kind of...
I'm trying to remember what game, the highlights I watched, and he just looked like the biggest man in the world. I don't know. I went and checked and he didn't, but I was like, look at that. Look, this guy's a fucking monster, man.
He's a big guy. He plays for the Dominican Republic. He was on international duty just there, and yeah, Luigi's pretty decent on the ball. He maybe has a touch of the Effie Ambroses, where he could look like an absolute Ballon d'Or winner 1 second and then do an Effie the next. But he's kind of, I think he's had that kind of 6 months settling in period to Scottish football. We signed him in January last season, and I think that side of his game's kind of, you're starting to see less and less of it. I think he's maybe adjusted to the pace of the game here. But as I say, kind of with the system that we've been playing recently, that kind of 3-4-2-1, the obvious positions that have been getting alternated the most has probably been the kind of 2 10s and the number 9. And it'll be interesting to see how we start up against Celtic. I know the opening day we started with Curtis Guthrie as the number 9, and nicest possible way, he's a big target man, kind of almost goes into our tag of being a big hammer throwing team. He'll go and be very physical with the centre halves. He'll try and win flick-ons, but he's kind of on a bit of a redemption arc from last season. Fans were calling for him to leave and were booing him actually when he came on in pre-season. And he's actually been very, very good this season, and coincided he got the assist for Bruce Anderson's goal at the weekend when he came on, and actually made quite a significant difference in the game when he came off the bench. So it'll be interesting to see who we start up top, or if he drops Bruce in, where he's played Bruce Anderson as a kind of 10 at times this season, and I would expect Newbley to start, but given his form, who knows? But I can imagine that we might throw Curtis Guthrie in, because we might need that out ball against Celtic, and he can get us up the park. He was, as I say, he was very effective in the games against Aberdeen, Hibs, for doing that at times.
Right, okay, right. So that brings us nicely on to this season. So again, he's kicked off the season with the League Cup group with Brecon, Hamilton Accies, Cove Rangers again, and Clyde. Stronger group for you guys. 3 wins and a penalty defeat. They meant that you topped your group, and a point over topped a group with a point over Hamilton, progressive at A United. 2-0, comfortable 2-0 home win, sent you through the quarters, and a home tie with Rangers. I'll get your opinion in a minute. League-wise, hit and a couple of misses. Misses and a couple of hit. Opening day draw with Aberdeen, 0-0, followed by an away capitulation at Rangers, 1-0 up till the 78th minute, and then he kind of turned off late in the day, allowing Rangers to score 3 more, but that's how it goes. That was followed up by that great 3-2 win you're talking about over Hibs, and that ended Lee Johnson's ill-fated spell in charge at Hibs. Well done in that. And then you backed that up with a draw against St Mirren, last gasp equaliser for St Mirren in that game at home, and then you had that away draw at Ross County, both of them 1 each. So after 5 games, you guys sit in 7th position, 1 win, 3 draws, 1 defeat, 5 goals scored, 8 conceded, -3 GD, 6 points on board, 1 point behind 5th and 6th place Hearts and Ross County, and 1 ahead of Killie and Dundee in 8th and 9th. So, how are you feeling so far with that start of the season? From what I have watched, the games, I mean, the Rangers game at the window, I mean, you had a couple of wee half chances in that game, but still is what it is. 0-0 against Aberdeen, you've won that game against Hibs. And then the St Mirren game, you look like you were mega unlucky to get the draw. But in the Ross County game, you look like you were lucky to get the draw. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at that, our opening 6 games of the season, we've got 5 of the top 6 from last season, and this seems to happen to us every year. I think every time I come on your podcast, I'm talking about how we've got 4 of the top 5 of the top 6 in our opening few games. I feel like it's a bit of a conspiracy from the SPFL to try and get rid of a beautiful artificial pitch, but. The opening day game against Aberdeen, and I think every pundit under the sun had Aberdeen nailed on for 3rd place, and I think we made Aberdeen look very, very average, and probably could have sneaked the game. I think we created the slightly better chances, but given my kind of trepidation going into the new season, that actually settled me watching us against Aberdeen that day.
Right.
And the best way I can put it is kind of we're seeing that kind of was nasty bastard Livingston from our opening couple of seasons in the league, where no team liked to come and play us because we were horrible to play against. And there's an element of that coming back into us, because again, kind of touching on what the manager said to me at the start of the season when we had him on, he kind of said we want to go back to what our success was built on, which was being horrible to play against, didn't chip away easy goals. And I think you've seen that at the start of the season. If you take the pre-season games into account as well, we've only lost 1 game this season, which was at Ibrox. So, we are a team in relatively decent form at the start of this season, and we're not shipping anywhere near the same amount of goals. Okay, yeah, we conceded 4 at Ibrox, but I think 78 minutes was when they got their second. Yeah. And we had the crowd turning at Ibrox for a spell. I think we had them on the ropes for 20 minutes, and that, did lose 4-0, but it wasn't a 4-0 game. So I actually came away from that with plenty of positives. We just kind of got to the point where we were dead on our feet, and Rangers subs kind of made a massive difference in terms of changing the pace of the game. Game at Easter Road, thought we were fantastic. Really punished Hibs' inability to defend across.
The boy Penrith looked, certainly from the highlights, your boy James Penrith looked. He was tearing them apart.
Yeah, Penrith was excellent, and he'll be pretty much nailed on to start at the weekend because Christian Montano's out for the next couple of months. So he'll be a pretty nailed on certainty to be out in the left-hand side, depending if David changes his shape or not for the game. But yeah, we were excellent at Easter Road, and I think the big positive with that game was that we ended that run of results away from home and managed to score away from home, and scoring 3 goals as well, scoring 3 very good goals in the game as well. And
without blowing smoke up your arse, I thought I was going to actually say that to you. I thought they were good goals, good football goals. They weren't the kind of the break of the ball. It was the ball was played down the line, we've got into a dangerous area, and your attacker fucking went for it rather than fucking. You know what I mean? It was. So I agree with you. I thought the 3 goal. I mean, the third one's an absolute bumper, but he's licked it, as you say. But
but we were excellent at Easter Road, and the icing on the cake was getting another Hibs manager sacked. Davy Martindale is the Grim Reaper of Hibs managers. I think that's Jack Ross. He's seen off, Sean Maloney's seen off, and now Lee Johnson. So he's completed the hat trick. But then to kind of follow that up, we had the game against Ayr United. We were very good, kind of solid performance in that game without being spectacular, but got ourselves into the quarterfinals of the League Cup as a result. And a nice wee payday at Ibrox, which will help our budget issues, I'm sure. But
was it Ibrox, is it? Sorry, I thought
it's at Ibrox as well, so probably worth a good kind of 300 grand for us. So, and then the game against St Mirren before the international break, it's probably 2 points that we've left out there. I would say going in front pretty late on in the game. I think it was 88 minutes that DeLucas got the goal, and then last kick of the ball, 96 minutes, St Mirren have kind of snatched the point. So, however, as you mentioned, I think that's balanced itself out with our performance up in Dingwall at the weekend, which was excruciating at times to watch. And again, I think the manager kind of talked about the ball being in hospital with concussion, and it wasn't worth any more than 60 seconds on sports scenes. So, yeah, that just sums up our game up in Dingwall at the weekend. But again, if I'll take the positive from that is, second half of last season, we lose that game 1 or 2-0. Whilst we managed to get ourselves back into the game, claw out a result when we've not been playing particularly well. So, as I say, we're seeing a lot of good qualities about the side this year, and I'm feeling more and more confident almost week on week that we are. Granted, I think it's going to be a tougher season for us, and I think we might be in and around the kind of bottom 3-4 places for longer stretches of this campaign, but I do think we've got enough in that team to get us over the line. And as I say, I kind of think there's good qualities that I was concerned about at the end of last season that I'm seeing this season. So yeah, I'm a lot more positive at this point. So next time I'm on open goal, I might actually not look like I'm about to take a walk along the Forth Road Bridge. So.
Right, so I mean, I've kind of stopped doing this recently because of the amount of managers and styles that changed. You know what I mean? But last season we had 3 meetings between our teams. There was 2 comfortable 3-0 wins, I think, for us. But you had that narrow 2-1 win in a rearranged fixture in December at Celtic Park. Now, bearing in mind Brendan Rodgers' previous mishaps and his maybe over-cautiousness sometimes on AstroTurf. I think the Kilmarnock game maybe was even a case of that. And from the words that you've just said to me with regards your confidence and you're getting back to that style and stuff like that, does that make... Obviously, you're not going to be sitting here going, yes, we're going to pump these, right? Well, you might, but I generally don't think you would. But are you more confident now that you can go and cause some disruption and actually play your own game on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen kind of bits and pieces of Celtic this season, and you'd be able to tell me better, Scott. But I feel Rodgers' style is different to Angie's in that it's 100%. a bit slower in terms of the build-up. It's a bit more patient, I would say, than Postecoglou's style, where I think Celtic could be a little bit more direct. The tempo was a lot higher under Postecoglou, and that might suit us a little bit to get bodies behind the ball and try and find an opportunity to play out. The fact that Celtic seem to have a few kind of frailties at the back, just with the number of injuries, the likes of Carter Vickers being out, who's always kind of been pretty much a standout when he's played ourselves, and he's managed Joe Newbley very, very well in the games against us last season. So that might again play into our hands, and the fact that Curtis Guthrie, if he was to play, just kind of almost wearing them down with that constant physical battle, and giving us that potential outball. So I'm not... Celtic are clear favourites, and it would be a travesty if Celtic weren't to take all 3 points. But I feel we were more successful against and caused Rodgers team. I think we drew 2 games or certainly 1 game when Rodgers was manager, and I think Lennon had replaced him for the second meeting at Celtic Park that season. But we had 2-0 in our first season when Rodgers was there, and certainly Neil Lennon struggled against us.
Did you not beat us under Rodgers? I'm wanting to think you beat us 1-0, but maybe I think that was that the one. I think he gets sent off. Ryan Christie gets sent off.
Yeah, I'm sure Lennon was in charge.
With Lennon, right?
Yeah.
See, I blank all that shit out, mate.
But we still managed to cause problems by being difficult to beat and getting men behind the ball. And a couple of the games that first season in the top flight, and Rodgers was his team that we were playing against for a couple of those games. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think it's a slightly different dynamic. I think Postecoglou had kind of broke that hoodoo that we seem to have over Celtic, and he found a way of kind of causing us a lot more problems. And again, kind of going back to Postecoglou, I think he learnt a lot from the couple of games that we had in his first season, where we won at Livi, the game Andrew Shinney scored, and then we drew 0-0 maybe a month or so afterwards at Celtic Park. And I remember they were putting a lot of cross balls into our box, but it was all, what a centre-half would want to head it clear. Whilst I think the games last season, especially at Celtic Park, it was so evident that they were firing balls low across our 6-yard box. And that's a horrible ball to try and defend as a defender. And I think 2 of the goals, and I think the game just before Christmas, Kyogo's one, he gets in at the front post, and I think one of them's an own goal as well, which again is kind of very similar. So, that caused us a lot more problems. And as I say, I think Postecoglou found a way to break us down and, as I say, cause us a lot more problems. But it'll be interesting with that kind of shift in style under Brendan Rodgers.
It is interesting if you go back and look at our games so far, because it's definitely been every pod I've done with somebody else, or I've generally come back to the naivety that we kind of believe things were just going to plod along. And then you kind of you actually remember how arrogant a man Brendan Rodgers is, that he's never really going to sit and go, oh, Andrew's good at this, I'll just copy him. Never. He was basically going to come in and go, this is how I play football. The Kilmarnock game was so worrying because they closed down our midfield so much that our centre-halves played with the ball. And then St Johnstone kind of almost... St Johnstone game's one of the games. If Celtic had won that game 5-0, nobody would have moaned. Do you know what I mean? It was one of the ones you just... I mean, the boys are half a line and stuff like that. But it's the fact it comes after the Kilmarnock game. But then you play Rangers, and Rangers tried to do the big lumping the ball up and left the midfield, and we won the game through the midfield. And that's something I'm thinking, if Livingston attempt to bombard the guys at the back, ultimately Scales, Phillips, that's what they might not be the same level as CCV, but in terms of heading the ball away and being hard in the tackle, that's them all day. Do you know what I mean? So whilst I can understand that, I'm not actually sure that would be the best way for Livy to go, but I'll tell you, our form has enough to make me concerned about this weekend.
Obviously,
that's the
basics. It's at our place as well, which is a haunting ground for Celtic in recent years. So
ever since he's appeared,
but it's right, as I say, you kind of talk.
We'll take. Oh, sorry, mate. Crack on. My apologies.
Yeah, as you say, kind of talking about going long and direct, and it's about us trying to be brave when we do get that opportunity to break out, and guys trying to latch on to any loose balls, latch on to kind of those balls dropping in midfield, and it's about us being brave. And the only tweak I could probably see is making our shape is adding, instead of 2 10s, just dropping another body into the kind of midfield and making it a 5 across, and then having just one in behind.
Yeah, well, as you said earlier on, to kind of follow you up on that, you've either set up in a 3-4-3, but then you've varied to the 3-5-2, or as you suggested, the 3-4-2-1. And so you think it will pretty much be the 3-4-2-1 you guys go with?
Yeah, I think, as I say, I think it'll be almost like a 3-5-1-1.
Right, 3-5-1.
I reckon he'll probably drop another body into the midfield. He certainly did that at Ibrox. So that, I think he tends to have a little shift in his system when we go to play the Old Firm, and I think that'll probably be the minor tweak that he'd make. Just obviously take into account the fact that, you know, he won't want to get overrun in there. It's been Shinnie and Holt who have been very, very consistent so far this season, but I think he will just try and add another body in there, potentially Mo Sangari, just because he is a bit more physical and in the middle of the park. So that might be an option that he looks at.
Right. Okay. Right. All right. So, well, I'll fling it at you then. Give me your prediction.
I can't see us winning the game. To be totally honest, you know, as positive as I would love to be, Scott, I'm a realist at the same time, I feel. So I'll go Celtic to win 2-0 on the day, but I do think they'll need to work hard for it as well.
Yeah, I do wonder if our game tomorrow night will have any bearing.
I think that's one of the positives I'm kind of looking at. It is we've got both halves of the Old Firm kind of coming up, and you guys at the weekend, and then we play Rangers in the League Cup during the week. And I'm kind of hoping the fact that the European games have started to kick in is maybe shifting the kind of mentality a little bit. They might have eyes elsewhere. So yeah, that's the hope, certainly.
Aye. Well, as I say, being totally honest, this game at the weekend does concern me. So that's the only way I can kind of compliment you. Right, but so that'll do us, mate. Once again, thank you for taking your time out in this evening and speaking to me. It's been really interesting. It has kind of shed a lot of light on Livingston for me this season. I'm sure we'll tie up again down the line. But before we go, sell your wares. Tell the people where they can follow you, can find you, and find the pods and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Talk Livy on Twitter, or X, or whatever camp you're in these days on the old Twitter front. But yeah, you can find us on all the usual podcast streaming sites, you know, Spotify, Apple, you know, everywhere, YouTube as well. So you can subscribe to that if you so wish to listen to me and Angus prattle on about the Lothian's finest football team. So yeah, feel free to tune in.
Absolutely amazing. Well, certainly for you guys, after this weekend, I hope your season goes from strength to strength and you end up getting yourself a wee semi-final League Cup place. That would be wonderful. Would be absolutely wonderful. That
would be the dream. And as we've spoke about plenty this episode, that I'll do our budget, World of Wonders as well, getting a wee semi-final in there as well.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. Well, thank you again, mate, and we'll catch up again. Okay.
Magic. Cheers for having us, Scott. Always a pleasure.